You need it. Isn't that the way it goes?
Yes. It goes well with it.
As long as it's compatible.
Yes.
So, are there any questions that came up? Monet.
Yes, I don't want to name names, but
But that person right
well, actually, Ken was doing the guiding, but there was some difficulty bringing parts together.
there was some, what? In what way was there difficulty?
Ken, you want to take it?
Sure.
Right, Ken?
Well, we get to the point of, can you appreciate what
Right.
each is doing for the other, or doing for the whole? And there was definitely an incongruence. It's like, yeah. So there was obviously something that needed to be added. Mm-hmm. And then I said, well, do you need other resources to add to the situation? And this person said, time.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, Chris? That's kind of, we kind of got stuck at that point. And so actually, I think we explored a little bit more, maybe going back to the resources and what does this one do, what does this one do, and it just didn't seem like it was going anywhere.
So where did you end up? Did Chris come over?
Chris came over.
And what did Chris and his expertness do? Help you do?
Chris? There was no we didn't get where we wanted to go.
So what happens when you have the two parts and they don't want to go together because they need more time? You honor it.
Right.
You honor it. That doesn't mean there's no solution. It means that these two parts need time to begin to appreciate one another. If you've had parts of you that have been disconnected from each other, distrustful of each other, it is not going to always happen like that they will build this understanding instantly. Okay? So time is a thing to honor. Chris?
And there was also probably an ecology issue too.
Uh-huh.
I think there was another part in there that didn't want it to happen.
Right.
And also them forcing my hands together.
One on each side might have had something to do with it?
Possibly.
Yes. So,
Did I have to grab the other hand and I grab the other one?
It's kind of like savings in a bag.
so when we're trying something new, isn't there usually a part of us that really is into exploratory mode and is willing to just be in the present with a guideline about where to go and to just try it? And then there's a part of us that wants to rely on the old.
You're doing.
Yes, and I know how to do this, and I know how to get this to happen, and I know how to offer solutions, and I know how to make this happen. And to honor both parts, that the one that's willing to explore really wants to learn and put yourself out there. The one that wants to fall back into old methods wants to be safe and do it right. And so as you honor both of these parts, bringing the best intentions together, might be interesting to notice what you get tomorrow that you can integrate in honoring both of those parts. Okay? And I look forward to seeing you then. PR in February, I heard a story that was just amazing. There are a lot of problems in nursing care homes for people with Alzheimer's and senile dementia because people behave in ways that are confusing and don't seem to make sense. And in the one nursing home, there was a woman who would grab food off of the other people's plates and eat it, put it in her mouth, grab it and put it in her mouth. And it would cause fights, end up in food fights or slapping or something, and they couldn't get her to stop. And in another wing of the same building, there was a woman who was pathologically afraid of eating, so she wouldn't eat anything. She was afraid the food was poisoned. And They couldn't get her to eat. It was at a point where they were going to have to start IVs or something to keep her alive. And couldn't get her over the fear with any rational way of being. So somebody got very clever. And they put them side by side. So that the woman who grabbed food off the plate, they told the woman who was afraid that she was her taster to make sure it wasn't poisoned. So every behavior has a usefulness in some context, even if you have dementia. So it was a wonderful story. I think we need to get more and more creative that way instead of this. So, how are you this morning?
Really well.
Strong, really well. Good. Did you notice some changes internally? Dreams? Yes. You look very different today. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to point to her. Don't look at her. Don't look at her. She looks very different today. Very good. Very good. Yeah. Comments or questions? No, we're going to continue today. Before we do any future pacing, one of the things that we are going to do is talk about what do you do with behaviors that aren't useful. You know, those ones you want to shake up a little bit. Well, one thing that seems to work in the mind is reframing, just as in the story that I told you. And there's two major kinds of reframing. One is context. And the story that I told you had both context and meaning, didn't it? So in a certain context, the behavior of grabbing food off of a plate is not useful when the people around don't expect it and don't want it. Okay? But if you put her in a context where taking it off is useful, you're changing that. And then in telling the woman sitting next to her, it has a different meaning. You change it totally. So I just love the word reframing, and it means to put the picture in a different frame. Maybe turn the frame. Maybe it's oval. Maybe it's a different color. But the context is putting it in a new place where it's appropriate, the behavior. I love this quote from Dave Barry. Karate is a form of martial arts in which people who have years and years of training can, using only their hands and feet, make some of the worst movies in the history of the world. And then there's a good meaning quote, and this is by, Whitney Brown, I think is his name. He's a comedian. I'm not a vegetarian because I love animals. I'm a vegetarian because I hate plants. Ever since I've heard that, I've hesitated whenever I eat broccoli. It's like, do I really want to hate this thing? So what something means, you know how when, especially in spouse situations or family situations, work dynamics that exist for a long time, when someone does something, it has a meaning to both the person doing it and the person experiencing the results of it. And that meaning can cause a chain of events that can be useful or not useful. So whenever your teenager comes home and they go, yeah, whatever, what meaning do you place to that? Attitude. He's got an attitude.
Well, I have a teenager that says that. He means, I don't want to talk about it right now.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it right now. Oh, good chance. Everyone's phone's off. That's a reminder. Thank you, Monet, for the reminder. Okay. So what if, so if you think, I don't want to do it, or it's an attitude, what chain of events does that trigger in you? What happens?
Antagonism.
You feel antagonistic.
Well, I don't have children, but
Okay, you would feel antagonism. What do you feel when your teen says that?
I know there's something going on inside of him, so I just let him be until he's through with it.
You let him be. Okay. Anybody else have teens in
I
that?
feel helpless.
You feel helpless. Okay. So you attach a meaning to what they're saying. And it could be correct, couldn't it? Could be correct. What if you attached a different meaning to it and responded to that differently? So, yeah, whatever. Wow, cool, whatever what? Tell me. We'll get a whole different response. Yes,
I have a Sunday service for children, you know. And mostly children who cannot even understand anything. And sometimes at the service, I want to have a special devotion, but still I cannot, and there's a lot of noises. And I just say myself, oh, God likes this confusion.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So I just say, and I console myself, I say, God must be loving this confusion.
So instead of confusion in your service being an interrupter, it's something that would please God. Oh, I like that. Think of what that does to how you behave. Yeah, wonderful. So both internally, when you have a behavior you don't like, if you pay attention to it and gets to its positive intention, you're doing a meaning reframe, aren't you? You're getting to a different meaning to it. I know this is really hard to believe, but when I was younger, I used to throw temper tantrums. When I was very young, like 3 or 4, if I didn't get what I wanted, I would bang my head on the floor and scream. When I became a teenager, I'd stamp my foot and walk out of the room. And as a woman in her 20s and 30s, I could out-argue you at a high tone of voice and get what I want. Or at least make everyone around me extremely upset. So as I got older, I found more subtle ways to do it, and mainly turned it inside, which was not necessarily a good thing. My heart would race. I didn't want to impose it on others, so I turned it inside. So when I took my NLP training, I knew this is a behavior I would like to get rid of. And in talking to that behavior, I got an image of myself, about 8 or 9. And it was that 8 or 9-year-old who was upset. So I would talk to her and say, what is it that you're trying to tell me by doing this, having me feel this? And it was, you're not getting something you need, or you're being disrespected. What you need to do is pay attention. So once I got a new meaning from I'm just throwing a temper tantrum to it's a signal I'm paying attention to pay attention, then I got new ways of dealing with it. I also asked her, in what context would this behavior be useful? Well, one of the things that I like about NLP is you never throw away a behavior. You find a context in which it's useful. Well, in my neighborhood in which I live in Denver, it's a relatively safe neighborhood. It's right near Cheeseman Park, which is a nice area of Denver. But there are also gangs, things like that. And for a while we had problems in our alleys with graffiti. The kids from the neighboring high school would come over with their spray cans and spray different symbols on our garage doors and the walls in the alley. And one day I was sitting in my backyard studying, and the table at which I was studying was positioned in such a way that I could see into the alley. But anyone in the alley, unless they were just at a real narrow space, could not see me. And they wouldn't think to look over there. I was being quiet. And I was sitting